Every day, millions of Americans rely on the steady hands and determination of the United States Postal Service. Behind every letter and package stands a union letter carrier whose working life has been shaped by the NALC and the power of collective bargaining.
It didn't really begin as a formally, legally organized union until 1889. And that's when a small group of unions from all over the country decided to band together and create a national organization. And they did it mainly because they wanted to lobby Congress on behalf of their workplace interests.
In 1889, postal workers formed the National Association of Letter Carriers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They founded our union to ensure postal workers would get a voice where none existed and to fight together for basic standards, like an 8-hour workday.
Really, really a tough job. It was a job where you expected to work 7 days a week. You had no days off. You had no limits on hours. Your pay was really at the mercy of the local postmaster. There was no national law. The federal government didn't put any conditions or standards in place. And the NALC led that fight even before they were a national union in the 1880s, lobbying state and local leaders all over the country to try to push Congress to pass an 8-hour workday, which was passed in 1888. Unfortunately, when the union was first organized in 1889, the Post Office Department refused to comply with the law. And eventually in 1893, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the NALC to get an 8-hour day. So that was a huge impetus to growth for the union. Like, people saw that the union could deliver for them. And so it was off to the races after that.
Year after year, the NALC appealed to Congress to raise postal pay, but their immense efforts delivered limited results. The real solution was collective bargaining rights. The NALC's lobbying campaign to win the right to bargain began in earnest in the 1950s, but it would take another 20 years with a wildcat strike to finally make it happen.
The NALC did not win true collective bargaining rights until 1970. So up to that point, they really were just a lobbying organization. The NALC often refers to it as a period of collective begging. They would lobby Congress, their local members of the House of Representatives and Senators to improve pay.
To all Americans, I say that the next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all.
In 1962, President Kennedy signed an executive order giving postal workers the right to organize and requiring the Post Office Department to formally recognize the NALC and the other postal unions. But it stopped short of granting real bargaining power.
And they actually did get a very first contract in 1962. It was like 25 pages long on lots of important things. But the big thing was that under that executive order, there was no right to bargain over wages or benefits. So the meat and potatoes of a job was really not subject to the decision-making of individual agencies. That was all left to Congress. And so the collective begging, continued, but it was an important first step.
By 1970, letter carriers had reached their breaking point. Pay wasn't keeping up with inflation. Working conditions had barely improved. The Post Office Department was struggling, and employee morale had hit rock bottom.
The Congress passed a giant pay increase for itself. They raised their own pay by 42%, and the rest of the federal government got 4%, at a time of very high inflation. And so that just infuriated workers all over the country, and that was the spark. And so in March of 1970, the biggest branch in the union at the time, Branch 36 in New York, held a meeting, and they basically declared a wildcat strike. That just sparked copycat strikes all over the country.
For the first time ever, letter carriers went on strike, and mail service in and out of New York was suspended.
The letter carriers are still carrying no letters. Their strike is illegal, but there is not much the government can do about it.
But this is the only means we have of letting Congress know that we cannot take it any longer. Either they give us what we should have, or we will stay out on strike until hell freezes over.
When the mail stopped moving, it struck at the heart of the American economy. Bills, bank transactions, and even the stock market depended on the postal system. Under mounting pressure, the government reached a resolution: end the strike, transform the post office, and grant postal workers full collective bargaining rights for the very first time. The Postal Reorganization Act gave letter carriers the right to bargain over pay. It also created something most private sector unions don't have: a guaranteed process for resolving disputes without going on strike.
The law requires interest arbitration if the parties cannot reach agreement after a contract has expired. The law also prohibits employees from striking. They are subject to the general ban on strikes by federal employees, since the Postal Service is part of the federal government. Interest arbitration is supposed to be the quid pro quo for not having the right to strike. It's supposed to result in a process that settles contracts in a way that reflects how contracts would be settled if employees did have the right to strike and there was true arm's-length bargaining. Each party selects a party arbitrator, a representative, to sit on the arbitration board, and the parties have an opportunity to select a neutral chairman.
It's quite unique to us. There's not anything quite like it anywhere, the interest arbitration process that we have. Having binding arbitration really gives you a backup and a way to make your case, and NALC takes full advantage of that.
The story of the NALC's collective bargaining history is one of steady progress, spanning nearly 6 decades. Along the way, the NALC confronted a series of increasingly difficult challenges posed by changing technology, hostile management initiatives involving automation and subcontracting, and adverse economic conditions. Throughout the 1970s, the NALC bargained alongside other postal unions. The priority was clear: win and protect cost of living adjustments in union contracts so wages could keep pace with inflation.
So the cost of living adjustment provision of our contract is vitally important. It's been really important for our union right from day one. Our very first contract had a cost of living clause in it. And we fought like hell ever since to keep it and to improve it. And so most union contracts had COLA clauses back then. Over the time, COLA clauses went out of fashion when inflation went down. A lot of unions gave them up, either voluntarily or through pressure from their employers. The NALC has really been, we've been steadfast in making sure that we hold on to the COLA, and it really paid off for us over the entire history of our bargaining, but especially in recent years. Every 6 months the CPI comes out and it triggers a COLA increase. So some unions have only 25% protection. Other unions like UPS and the Teamsters, they have a COLA provision that only kicks in if inflation exceeds 3%. So most of the time they don't get a COLA because inflation generally for the last 20 or 30 years, except for a couple years after the pandemic, has been below 3%. So that whole time we've been getting steady increases.
In 1978, the NALC rejected a tentative agreement that would have capped cost of living adjustments, limiting wage increases even as inflation continued to rise. The dispute moved through an expedited mediation arbitration process where the cap was removed, preserving uncapped COLA protection and securing one of the NALC's most significant bargaining victories.
In 1984, there was no possibility whatsoever of a voluntary agreement. The Postal Service was totally dug in and wanted all sorts of cutbacks in letter carrier compensation. The law it has a standard of comparability. The Postal Service is supposed to pay its employees on a standard of comparable pay for comparable work in the private sector. Usually what that meant, at least traditionally, in conventional interest arbitrations, is that you'd find employers who were similar to your employer in the same sector and look at what they were paying their employees. What the Postal Service economists did was completely different. They used Census Bureau data to look at the entire population in the private sector. and compare it to the Postal Service. So we had to retain our own team of economists and master this technique ourselves, which is something that we, for the most part, didn't know anything about, and developed an argument that proved very effective. Bottom line is, ultimately, the arbitrator did not adopt this technique for analyzing Postal Service wages. The result was an award which awarded significant pay increases, preserved the COLA, but it did create some lower pay steps in the pay schedule, as well as some higher steps in the pay schedule, mainly for the APWU crafts, although it did impact the letter carriers as well.
In 1994, the NALC began bargaining independently from the other postal unions, seeking higher pay as DPS automation dramatically changed the work of city letter carriers. The NALC raised the issue of how automation had increased carrier productivity and thus changed the nature of the job in a landmark interest arbitration covering the 1998 to 2001 contract.
Letter carriers had been tied to the same pay as postal clerks for over 100 years. And we were arguing that the pattern had to be broken, mainly because of the impact of technology on letter carrier work, which had significantly changed the nature of the work. Postal Service was fiercely resisting breaking that linkage. And so the parties ultimately agreed to a baseball-style last best offer process, and the arbitrator picked our offer. And that's how letter carriers got upgraded in 1999, because we had a better case than the Postal Service.
In the first decade of the new century, the NALC successfully pushed back against a major effort by postal management to subcontract all new deliveries to low-wage, non-union workers.
Our relationship with postal management really goes up and down. You know, we've had good periods where we're making progress through, and we're working, really well together to sort of solve problems. Other times we've had huge fights. We had a huge fight in the mid 2000s about contracting out. The Board of Governors of the Postal Service made a decision that all new delivery would go to contract workers, low-wage, non-union workers. And the NALC did a tremendous job fighting that off. We had a national campaign, both legislatively and at the collective bargaining table, to fight that. And eventually in 2006, we got an agreement that forced the Postal Service to disband their contract delivery service.
NALC is 100% committed to fight to protect the job security and standard of living of letter carriers, no matter what economic conditions we face.
The NALC has bargained through one of the most challenging periods in Postal Service history. Devastating recessions, the explosive growth of e-commerce, and a historic pandemic. As letter mail volume declined and package deliveries surged, our union continues negotiating through an extended period of economic uncertainty.
I refer to really the period since 2010 as the period of crisis bargaining. We could not get a voluntary agreement back in 2012. We went to arbitration. And in that interest arbitration, we took some serious hits. The Postal Service was in real financial trouble. And it was that arbitration really created a large non-career workforce, the CCA workforce that we have today. It was a pay freeze for a couple of years. Since that time, the condition of the Postal Service has improved somewhat. It's still a huge challenge. We've been clawing back a lot of aspects of difficult provisions that came out of that contract. So little by little, the last few contracts, we've reestablished the traditional pattern of having one general increase and 2 COLAs a year. We've reduced the size of the CCA workforce. We've made progress in raising starting pay of carriers. Over the last 2 contracts, we've made progress in raising the top pay over the last 2 contracts. Back in 2013, other postal unions really adopted 2-tier wage systems that lowered the top pay. We did not do that. We fought like hell to keep having a single endpoint to our pay structures. That's the pay rate that people spend most of their career at. So the goal was to maximize career earnings and maximize retirement benefits, which is really important. That top pay, step P pay, is really what determines your future retirement income. We've done 16 rounds of bargaining over 55 years, and I think we can be very proud of our history. I looked it up. There's been 150 wage increases over those 55 years, almost 3 wage increases a year. If you just compare that to what federal employees in other agencies who don't have collective bargaining, there's no comparison.
NALC members can take great pride in our union's record of success in bargaining since the 1970 postal strike, preserving cost of living adjustments, limiting non-union outsourcing, securing upgrades, and raising city carrier pay. But there is still work to be done. The challenges facing letter carriers continue to evolve, and the NALC's commitment to protect the future of our craft remains as strong as ever.
Leading up to this round of bargaining, our preparation was bigger, frankly, than it's ever been in the past. That was intentional. We incorporated some things that we've done in recent years, the way we use our council members, but we've also wanted our members to have the opportunity to provide input.
Through a variety of new methods, city carriers from across the country have shared ideas, raised concerns, and helped ensure our bargaining agenda reflects the realities of the workroom floor. The feedback gathered from members, along with the official bargaining positions passed by NALC convention delegates, became the foundation for the proposals our bargaining teams presented directly to the Postal Service during negotiations.
The preparation that we did this time, the involvement of our members, whether that's through a survey that they participated in or polling that we've done or events we've held like the National Rap Session, everything that we collected through the rank and file committees, through the surveys, to the things that I hear from attending different meetings around the country and what's communicated to me by our council members and branch presidents. And I don't have any question that as the process continues to play out, that preparation and our members' involvement has been very valuable.
As with every round of bargaining, our preparations began well ahead of the start of the official bargaining period. In September of 2025, the Executive Council met at NALC headquarters to begin preparation, appointing 6 internal bargaining subcommittees composed of Executive Council members and headquarters staff. These subcommittees began by reviewing official bargaining positions adopted by NALC conventions, other union contracts, and communications from NALC members in order to develop proposals for submission in the bargaining process. They continued to meet weekly. In November 2025, more than 1,000 NALC branch and state leaders from across the country gathered in Cleveland, Ohio for NALC's 2025 National Conference to discuss collective bargaining preparations and goals.
I think there are also thousands of conversations that take place between attendees and interactions that we can have directly, not just in that structured setting in a classroom or in a rap session, but also just the natural conversations that happen lead to a more productive event.
In September 2025 and January 2026, NALC convened 2 of their first-of-kind rank-and-file bargaining committees. The committees developed their own ideas, which were incorporated into the proposals that the Executive Council bargaining subcommittees passed to the Postal Service during negotiations. 3 days before the opening of negotiations, more than 100 branches from coast to coast held local fight-like-hell rallies calling for a fair contract. In sun, snow, and rain, letter carriers and supporters across the country showed up to fight for what we deserve.
We come here this morning with a singular goal, and that is to reach a contract that fairly compensates, recognizes, and values America's 200,000 active city letter carriers. We know what we deserve. We know the value of the work that we do, and we are hopeful that through this process, we are able to reach an agreement that achieves our goals. Time and time again, we've proved that we can adapt. Whether it was natural disasters, global pandemics, record-breaking temperatures, and everything in between, we take pride in continuing to serve the American people. And it's only right and it's only fair that that commitment is rewarded with a fair contract that's been earned through the dedication and hard work of America's labor.